These three pots look more or less the same, don't they? Three pots of soil ideal for growing plants. But the truth is, they're completely different. One of them is going to help your plant thrive, one of them will quietly choke the roots until everything slows down, and one, if you're unlucky, will kill the plant before you even realise what's going on. Because when it comes to indoor plants, what's under the surface is everything. And the biggest reason so many houseplants struggle is not what most people think. It's not overwatering, it's not neglect, it's the soil. Most beginners think that soil is just the stuff that holds the plant in place, but if the roots are sitting in the wrong mix, everything else becomes a guessing game. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what's going wrong inside that pot and what the pros do differently to make sure that their plants thrive from the ground up. Let's start with a truth bomb most beginners don't hear. Indoor plant soil isn't soil, not in the way you think. What we use for houseplants isn't the rich, living earth you dig up from your garden. It's a potting mix, a man-made blend designed to be lightweight, sterile and manageable in containers. But even then, not all potting mixes are created equal. Most bagged mixes are made from some combination of coir or peat to hold water, perlite to help with airflow, and maybe a bit of bark or even compost for structuring nutrients. It's meant to create the right balance between moisture and oxygen around your plant's roots. Because that's the goal. It's not just hold the plant in place, it's create a breathable, living root environment. But the issue is that balance is as fragile as your Calophaea's will to live. If there's too much water retention, then you end up with the dreaded root rot. On the other hand, if there's too much drainage, then your plant dries out quicker than a scaffolder in the sun. And most off-the-shelf mixes lean too far in the wrong direction, especially indoors where airflow is limited and water evaporates much slower than outside. So when pros talk about soil, what they actually mean is a root environment tailored to the plant and the space it lives in. And that starts with understanding that this brown stuff isn't just dirt, it's a life support system. If you get that right, the rest becomes easier. Let's talk about the classic rookie errors, the things that I've most definitely done and the things that you've probably done too. And the things that make your plants sit there looking miserable like they just caught themselves in a Sheffield Made Plants video about 10 plants not to buy. First up, buy multi-purpose compost for indoor plants. This is probably the most common one. You're in the garden centre, you see that big bag that says perfect for all plants and you think, easy, I was that person too. But that mix is almost always designed for outdoor use. It's great for flower beds, hanging baskets and vegetable patches, environments with wind, sun, worms and actual drainage. But indoors where airflow is low and pots are small, that stuff holds onto water like a kitchen sponge left in the sink. The texture is too heavy, too dense, and once it gets wet, it stays wet. Your roots end up trapped in damp, compacted sludge. It's basically like putting your plant in a soggy sleeping bag and wondering why it's not growing. Next, using the same mix for every plant. This is the soil equivalent of giving every member of your family the same haircut, even the bald uncle. Doesn't make sense, does it? Succulents want fast drainage. Aroids like chunky mixes with air pockets. Calophaeas want something finer, a bit moisture retentive, but definitely not swampy. You don't need a different mix for every single plant, but if you're using one generic blend across absolutely everything, then you're always going to have one group that's unhappy. And if it's the fussy ones like Calophaeas, then they will let you know, loudly, with brown edges and passive-aggressive drooping. Another one is not understanding how airflow works. People think soil is all about water, but it's actually more about the air. Roots need oxygen just as much as they need moisture. When your soil compacts over time, which cheap mixes tend to do, oxygen can't get in and the roots suffocate. You'll water and the plant still looks limp, so you do what anyone would do, you water more. But now the roots are wet, oxygen starved and vulnerable to rot. And then we got moisture control mixes. They sound helpful, like they're doing the thinking for you, but in reality they're a trap. These mixes often contain polymers that hold on to water for longer, which is fine if you're growing tomatoes on a sunny patio, for example, but indoors it just keeps the roots wet for too long. Especially in winter, when the plant's not drinking as much, these soils turn into mouldy wet cake batter. You check your plant in spring and it's rotted away quietly over Christmas while you were busy watching the Gavin and Stacey special. There's also a time bomb hidden in peat heavy mixes. When peat dries out, it becomes hydrophobic, so water just runs off the surface instead of actually soaking in. So you water your plant, think it's fine, but the middle of the pot is bone dry. Then you overwater to compensate, and now you've got dry spots and soggy patches all in the same pot. All these mistakes are understandable. Most of the advice out there is vague or written on the back of a bag by someone who's never actually grown anything indoors. But once you learn what's actually happening under the surface, then you start to see how all these things add up. Most beginners grab a bag or whatever looks good, chuck it in the pot and hope for the best. But pros build the mix around the plant, because no matter how pretty the leaves are, nothing grows well with bad foundations. It starts with 3 things: drainage, aeration and moisture retention. Think of it like fine-tuning an instrument. If one element is off, like too much water or not enough air or soil that dries out too fast, then the whole thing resembles a 2-year-old banging on a piano. So let's break it down with real examples. If you're growing aroids like monsteras or philodendrons and syngoniums, you want a mix that holds some moisture but drains well and lets the roots breathe. Coconut coir is a great base because it holds water but doesn't get too soggy. Perlite is used in pretty much all mixes because it creates air pockets for oxygen to get in and help the roots breathe. Bark and coconut husks are a great addition to open it all up even further. When you water this mix, you should find out it holds just enough moisture but then dries out evenly, which is exactly what these plants want. If you're growing succulents, cacti or even snake plants, the job is to get the water in and out again fast. These plants store water in their leaves, so the mix shouldn't stay wet for too long. These mixes should start with coir, then have a load of grit or pumice mixed in. No compost or anything that holds water for too long. You water it, it drains in seconds and the roots get what they need without sitting around in moisture. Now these mixes feel dry within a few days, which is perfect. For ferns, calophyas and prayer plants, it's a different story. These plants want consistent moisture, not wetness, just steady hydration. So the mix needs to hold water a little longer but still let the roots breathe. I go heavier on coir, add a touch of vermiculite for extra moisture retention and just enough perlite to stop it getting claggy. Think rainforest floor, soft, springy but never soggy. Now, to really get things right, we shouldn't just think about the soil on its own. There are a couple of things that can make things better or worse for your plant. One of them is pots. Plastic dries out slowly, while terracotta dries out much faster, and small pots dry quicker than big ones. So the same plant in 2 different pots might need slightly different soil. If I'm planting something thirsty in terracotta pot, then I'll use less drainage material. If it's going in plastic, then I'll open the mix up a bit more. And your environment plays a big part too. Plants near radiators in bright sun or next to a window will dry out faster than ones in a shady corner. So you can't just follow the one-size-fits-all recipe. That's the trap. You've got to adjust based on your conditions. There's one last piece that trips people up, and it's happening before the soil even gets to your plant. Let's say you're in the indoor plant section and you're looking for some soil. In most cases, at least here in Sheffield, the soil is sold in bags with tiny perforations. Avoid these soils. The idea is that the soil can breathe during storage. Maybe that makes sense for big outdoor planters or raised beds, but for indoor plants it's a disaster waiting to happen. Those little holes allow air and humidity to interact with the organic material inside. They're basically letting it breathe. This suggests that what's inside is alive, and we don't want that for indoor plants. We prefer a sterile mix that is made primarily from coconut coir. By the time you open it, you might be unleashing fungus gnats before your plant even touches it. This is one of the most common ways people get fungus gnats in their homes, and they never suspect the soil. The bag looked clean and the mix looked fine, but it was already compromised. Try to always use sealed bags with no holes designed for indoor use. That's why I use Cy Botanica's pre-made mixes. It's helped keep my gnats to a modest rather than biblical level. Let's finish strong with some bonus tips that pro growers use all the time. The kind of stuff that doesn't make it onto a care label but quietly makes you a much better plant parent. Try to check the texture before you pot up. This is your first line of defence. Take a handful of the mix and give it a good squeeze. If water runs out between your fingers, it's potentially holding on to too much moisture. If it squishes into a tight clump and stays like that, then it's probably too compact. Your roots won't be able to breathe. What you want is a mix that clumps loosely but falls apart easily when you tap it. That tells you it's got both structure and airflow. Using clear plastic pots is hands down one of the best ways to get a better understanding of your soil. With a clear nursery pot, you can see when the soil's drying out, if water's pooling at the bottom, and you can literally watch the roots growing or even rotting. It removes all the guesswork. No need to wonder if the mix is drying evenly or if the roots are reaching the bottom. You'll see it all. And once you know what healthy roots actually look like, you'll start catching problems early before your plants start screaming at you with crispy leaves. Now this next tip stopped me destroying my plants. Stop watering by calendar and start using weight. Forget the old advice about watering once a week or every few days. That's how you end up with root rot one week and bone dry soil the next. Instead, lift the pot after you watered it. Feel how heavy it is. Then wait a few days and lift it again. As the water evaporates and the plant drinks, the weight will drop. It sounds basic, but it's one of the best indicators of whether the soil's still moist down where it matters. And even the best soil mix doesn't last forever. Over time, organic materials break down. Bark turns to mush, core starts seriously compacting, and perlite tends to settle at the top for some reason. And suddenly your free draining, airy mix has turned into something dense and stale that doesn't hold on to water or oxygen properly. Now you don't always need to repot completely. Sometimes just removing the top third and replacing it with fresh mix is enough to perk things up. But if the plant's been in the same soil for more than 2 years, then it's probably time for a full refresh. But if you really want to push it further, you might not want to use soil at all. There's a method I've used on my own snake plants that skips the mess and the guesswork entirely, and it's transformed the way he grows. Click here next to see how Semi Hydro can rescue even the fussiest plants, and I'll see you there.